The sun was brutal, bearing down on the shimmering pool like a relentless spotlight. The scent of saltwater and coconut sunscreen lingered in the air, mixing with the laughter of vacationers and the distant hum of waves rolling onto the beach. Derek Carter stretched his massive frame across the poolside lounge chair, his dark sunglasses shielding his eyes as he watched his two daughters play in the water. His muscles, chiseled from years of discipline and hard work, glistened under the sun. To an outsider, he might look like an athlete, a retired football player maybe. But Derek Carter wasn't just anyone. He was a high-ranking FBI agent, a man who had spent years hunting down criminals, breaking apart trafficking rings, and facing danger head-on. Yet none of that mattered today. Today, he was just a dad on vacation. Zoe, 9 years old, was bold and full of energy, her long braids swinging as she splashed in the pool. Maya, only 6, clung to the edge, giggling as her sister encouraged her to jump in. Derek smiled. This was the kind of moment he worked so hard for. Precious time with his family, free from stress, away from the dangers of his job. Vanessa, his wife, was beside him sipping an ice-cold drink, looking stunning in her sundress. She was a civil rights lawyer, sharp as a blade and fearless in the courtroom. She didn't just fight cases, she dismantled injustices. The resort was a 5-star paradise, the kind of place where luxury dripped from every corner. Pristine white towels, attentive staff, infinity pools stretching toward the ocean. Everything was perfect. At least, it should have been. Derek sensed it before he even turned his head, the weight of stairs, the shift in the atmosphere. He lifted his sunglasses slightly, eyes scanning. 2 resort security guards stood at a distance watching, not casually, not in the way staff checked on guests. They were staring directly at him. He didn't react. Years in the field had taught him not to react too quickly. He wasn't going to let some unwanted attention ruin this vacation. But then, the guards started talking into their radios. Derek exhaled slowly, rubbing his jaw. He already knew where this was going. Vanessa, flipping through a book, glanced up and caught his expression. "What is it?" He nodded toward the guards. "They're watching us." Her face hardened. She was used to this, too used to it. Zoe and Maya were still playing, oblivious to the shift in the air. Derek didn't want to ruin their moment, but something told him this wasn't going to stop here. Minutes later, he was proven right. 2 uniformed police officers walked in, scanning the area. Derek's shoulders tightened. They weren't looking for a suspect. They were looking for him. One of them, a younger cop with a buzz cut and an air of cocky authority, nudged his partner before striding over. Derek sat up, already bracing for what was coming. "Sir, we need to speak with you." Vanessa put down her drink. "Here we go." Derek kept his voice calm. "About what?" The officer smirked. "We've had some reports of unauthorized individuals using the resort's amenities." There it was. Derek could feel Vanessa bristling beside him. He placed a hand on her knee under the table, a silent, "Let me handle this." "We're guests here," Derek said smoothly. "Room 412. If there's an issue, you can check with the front desk." The second officer, older and more composed, studied Derek for a moment. His gaze flickered to his massive muscular frame, analyzing, assessing, but it wasn't just suspicion in his eyes. There was something else. Prejudice. Buzzcut officer folded his arms. "I'm going to need some ID." Derek sighed, keeping his patience in check. "You asking everyone for ID, or just me?" Buzzcut smirked. "Sir, we need to verify." Zoe and Maya were now watching. The fun was over. They might not fully understand, but they knew something was wrong. Vanessa's voice was ice-cold. "You do not have the right to harass my husband in front of our kids." Buzzcut held up a hand, mockingly polite. "Ma'am, I'd appreciate it if you let your husband speak for himself." Derek's jaw clenched. He was done playing along. His voice dropped lower, deadly calm. "I don't think you know who you're talking to." Buzzcut's smirk wavered. Derek reached into his pocket, slow and deliberate, and pulled out his wallet. He flipped it open, revealing his FBI badge. Silence. Buzzcut froze. The second officer's expression changed instantly. Derek leaned forward, voice even. "Now, do you want to rethink how you're handling this?" Buzzcut's confidence was shaken, but he wasn't backing down. His pride wouldn't let him. "You still need to provide a state-issued ID." Derek let out a humorless laugh. "You think I'm lying? You think I'm flashing a fake federal badge?" The second officer, the older one, was nervous now. He took a small step back, shifting uneasily. He knew this was bad. Vanessa stood up, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "You're on thin ice. If you don't back off, I'm making some calls. You're about to be in deep legal trouble." But Buzzcut wouldn't quit. His pride wouldn't let him. "You still need to come with us," he said, "for further questioning." Derek stood up, all 6'4", 260 pounds of him, muscles rippling, imposing, a force of nature. Buzzcut took a step back. "You're making a mistake," Derek said. His voice wasn't raised, but it carried weight. For a split second, Buzzcut hesitated. Then, in a desperate attempt to regain control, he reached for his cuffs. "Turn around," he said. Zoe screamed. Maya started crying. Vanessa lunged forward. "You will not touch him!" But it was too late. Buzzcut grabbed Derek's wrist and snapped the handcuffs on. Gasps. Phones came out. The whole pool area froze. Vanessa was furious. "You just arrested an FBI agent." Buzzcut's face drained of color. Because now, he knew he'd just ruined his career. The metal cuffs clamped down around Derek Carter's massive wrists, the cold steel pressing against his skin. His daughter's terrified screams cut through the resort's once tranquil atmosphere. Guests lounging by the pool sat up in shock, some whispering, others reaching for their phones, sensing that something was very, very wrong. Maya, only 6 years old, clung to her mother's leg, her small body trembling. "Mommy, why are they taking Daddy?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, filled with pure fear. Zoe, 9 years old, was shaking with anger, her hands clenched into fists. She had never seen her father lose a fight. He was the strongest man she knew, the one who lifted her onto his shoulders like she weighed nothing, who could chase away bad dreams with just a hug. Yet now, these men were treating him like a criminal. Vanessa Carter, a woman who had won countless courtroom battles, had never felt so helpless in her life. Her husband, an elite FBI agent, stood restrained like some thug off the street, in front of their children. Her pulse pounded in her ears. "You uncuff him right now." Her voice was sharp as a blade, slicing through the tension in the air. Officer Reynolds, the cocky one, smirked. "Enjoying this. Ma'am, step back. Or do we need to detain you too?" That was the wrong thing to say. Derek exhaled sharply, his patience dangling by a thread. If Reynolds had any idea who he was messing with, he wouldn't be grinning like that. "Listen carefully," Derek said, his voice eerily calm despite the rage simmering beneath. "You're making a grave mistake." Reynolds scoffed, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "Oh yeah? And why's that?" Vanessa's voice cut in, filled with fury. "Because my husband is a federal agent. You just illegally detained an FBI officer in front of witnesses. This entire resort is watching." For the first time, silence. Reynolds blinked, his face draining of color. Sergeant Miller, the older officer, shifted uncomfortably. He knew. His gut had been telling him this wasn't right from the beginning, and now he realized they had just dug their own graves. But Reynolds, his pride wouldn't let him back down. "Anyone can say they're FBI," he shot back, but his voice was less certain now. "I need proof." Derek held his cuffed hands up, his massive arms flexing effortlessly despite the restraint. "My wallet, inside, my badge." Reynolds hesitated. Vanessa crossed her arms. "If you have half a brain, you'll check it before you make the biggest mistake of your career." Miller, swallowing hard, reached into Derek's pocket and pulled out the wallet. He flipped it open and froze. The golden badge gleamed under the sun. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Derek's photo, his credentials, his rank. Reynolds went pale. Miller took a sharp step back. "Oh, shh!" Vanessa's voice was like thunder. "Now, do you understand what you've done?" A woman by the pool gasped. "They really just arrested an FBI agent." Another guest whispered, "That guy looks like a superhero. Why would they think he's trespassing?" Phones were out. Guests were recording. The officers were surrounded by witnesses. And Derek? He was done playing. He locked eyes with Reynolds, his deep voice turning deadly quiet. "Take these cuffs off." Reynolds hesitated, gripping his belt. He wanted to resist, to somehow save face. But Miller? He wasn't about to go down for this idiot's mistake. His hand shook as he fumbled for the key. "Unlock him," Miller muttered, his voice tight. "Now." Reynolds clenched his jaw but obeyed. The metal cuffs snapped open, falling away from Derek's wrists. Derek rubbed his wrists slowly, watching Reynolds with the kind of look that could break a man in half. "You think this is over?" Derek asked. Reynolds flinched. Miller turned to Vanessa, pleading now. "Ma'am, listen. This was all a misunderstanding. No need to escalate things." Vanessa took a slow step forward, her voice icy cold. "You humiliated my husband, terrorized my children, and treated a law-abiding family like criminals." Miller winced. We were just following protocol." Vanessa's laugh was sharp as glass. "Oh, don't start with that. Protocol? You assaulted and detained a federal officer without reason, and you did it because he's a big black man in a luxury resort." Miller couldn't argue. Reynolds, still trying to salvage his pride, crossed his arms. "Look, we didn't—" "You're finished," Vanessa cut in. "Both of you." Reynolds swallowed hard. What do you mean?" Derek turned slightly, stretching out his broad shoulders. His presence alone made Reynolds shrink. "My wife's a civil rights attorney," Derek said. "You just gave her a legal case on a silver platter." Reynolds went rigid. Miller looked like he was about to throw up. "Ma'am, please, we can fix this." Vanessa tilted her head. "Fix this?" She pointed at their daughters, Zoe still fuming, Maya still crying. "Can you fix what they just saw?" Miller had no answer. Derek took a step forward, his sheer size and power overwhelming Reynolds. "I've put men like you behind bars for less," Derek said. "But you just ruined your career all by yourself." Reynolds couldn't move. Vanessa smiled, but there was no kindness in it. "Congratulations, boys, you're about to go viral." Miller turned, glancing at the crowd, at the phones recording everything. Reynolds followed his gaze, and for the first time today he felt real fear. The fallout began before the officers even had a chance to process what had just happened. A woman in a designer swimsuit whispered to her husband, "Did they really just arrest an FBI agent?" The man, shaking his head in disbelief, muttered, "Idiots." Another guest, a middle-aged man with sunglasses perched on his head, tapped at his phone furiously. "This is going straight to Twitter," he said, eyes gleaming with anticipation. The energy had shifted. The officers who once radiated arrogance now stood there, shoulders stiff, eyes darting nervously to the growing crowd of vacationers filming everything. Some guests were openly talking now, shaking their heads, whispering in outrage. Reynolds, the cocky officer who had thrown the cuffs on Derek, looked sick. He had felt powerful only moments ago, but now he was realizing what he had just done. He had arrested a federal agent, a black federal agent, on vacation, in front of dozens of wealthy, predominantly white guests. This wasn't just bad. This was career-ending. And the worst part? It was all on video. Vanessa was already on her phone, speaking calmly, but her words were like bullets. "David, I need you to put me in contact with the director. Now, yes, it's an emergency. Your agents just detained my husband." The director. Reynolds and Miller exchanged a look. This wasn't just a problem. This was a disaster. Derek flexed his massive arms, rubbing his wrists where the cuffs had been, his gaze locked onto Reynolds like a predator eyeing its prey. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Reynolds swallowed. "Look, we were just doing our—" "Don't!" Derek's voice was low, carrying the kind of weight that silenced an entire room. Reynolds shut his mouth. Miller turned to Derek, his voice pleading now. "Mr. Carter, listen. Maybe we can—" "You arrested me in front of my daughters," Derek interrupted, his voice as sharp as a blade. His broad shoulders squared, his presence immense, towering over the two men. "You put cuffs on me without reason. You ignored my badge. You humiliated my wife." Miller looked at the other guests, who were watching intently, phones still held high. His pale face told Derek everything he needed to know. They knew. They knew they had screwed up. Vanessa turned away from her call, eyes blazing. "Your department just made national news." Reynolds stiffened. "That's—" "You think I'm joking," Vanessa scoffed. "Take a look for yourself." She held up her phone, and there it was. A viral video, hundreds of thousands of views, in minutes. The caption: "Racist cops arrest FBI agent on vacation in front of his kids." Reynolds' mouth fell open. Miller let out a quiet, defeated sigh. Derek folded his arms, his massive frame making them look small. "How long do you think it'll take before your bosses see this?" Reynolds didn't answer, because he already knew. It had already happened. The radio on his belt suddenly crackled. "Dispatch to Officer Reynolds. Report to command immediately." Silence. Miller looked at him. "You better take that." Reynolds grabbed his radio, his hand trembling slightly. Copy that." Vanessa smiled, the kind of smile that meant war. "I hope your department has good lawyers." Reynolds rushed away, his movements stiff, his face flushed with panic. Miller, still standing there, let out a slow breath. His hands were shaking as he turned to Derek and Vanessa. I know an apology isn't enough," he said quietly, voice hollow, "but I truly, truly regret what just happened." Vanessa's eyes were like daggers. "You regret it because you got caught." Miller didn't argue, because she was right. Before he could say another word, 3 black SUVs rolled into the resort's parking lot, and out stepped 6 FBI agents. Reynolds, halfway across the pool deck, stopped cold. He turned slowly, realizing exactly who had arrived. And the look on his face? Priceless. Derek smiled for the first time all day. "Now," he muttered under his breath, "things are about to get fun." A tall man in a suit, Agent Morales, stepped out first. His sharp eyes scanned the situation instantly, reading the tension in the air. He approached Derek directly, ignoring everyone else. "Are you all right, Carter?" Derek nodded. "I'm fine, but my daughters just watched me get arrested for no reason." Morales turned to the officers. "And who's responsible for that?" Miller looked at the ground. Reynolds, to his credit, stood frozen, his face going pale. Morales didn't blink. "You two, hand over your badges, now." Reynolds flinched. "Sir, Morales' voice was sharp. "Did I stutter?" The silence that followed was deafening. Slowly, painfully, Reynolds and Miller reached for their belts, unhooking their badges. Morales took them, slipping them into his pocket. "You're both on immediate suspension." Reynolds swallowed hard. "This isn't—" "Shut up." Morales' tone left zero room for argument. "You just turned your department into a public relations nightmare. If I were you, I'd start looking for another job." Miller's shoulders sagged. He knew this was it. Reynolds, for the first time, looked at Derek, and there was no arrogance left, only fear. Derek stared him down. "You know what the funny part is?" Reynolds didn't answer. Derek stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the smaller man. "If you had just treated me like a person," Derek said, his voice low, "I would have let this go." Reynolds swallowed hard. But you didn't, Derek continued. You treated me like a criminal, in front of my wife, in front of my daughters, in front of all these people. Reynolds broke eye contact. He couldn't handle it. Derek smirked. So now you're going to pay for it. Reynolds barely breathed. Morales turned to Vanessa. Do you want them charged? Vanessa crossed her arms, smiling. Oh, we're pressing everything. Miller closed his eyes. He knew. He was done. Reynolds, he looked like he was about to throw up. Derek cracked his knuckles, turning back to his family. Zoe, finally smiling, clung to his arm. Dad, are they going to go to jail? Derek chuckled, ruffling her hair. If not jail, definitely the unemployment line. Vanessa kissed his cheek. Now this vacation is getting interesting. Derek grinned. Yeah. Now let's get started. The phone call came the next morning. Derek was sitting on the balcony of their resort suite, drinking his coffee, the ocean breeze drifting in, but his mind wasn't on the waves. It was on his daughters. Maya, only 6, had slept in their bed last night, too scared to be alone. Zoe had stayed awake longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, her little hands balled into fists. They weren't the same as they were before yesterday. Derek had spent his entire career protecting people. He had been in shootouts, taken down dangerous criminals, stopped real threats to national security, but nothing had ever made him feel as powerless as watching his daughter's innocence shatter in front of him. And that's why this wasn't over. Vanessa walked onto the balcony, phone in hand. She had that look in her eyes, the one she got right before she tore someone apart in court. She held out the phone. It's the police chief. Derek raised an eyebrow. Took them long enough. Vanessa handed him the phone. This should be good, she murmured, crossing her arms. Derek took a slow sip of his coffee, then answered. Carter. A deep voice crackled through the speaker. Agent Carter, this is Chief Douglas. I wanted to personally extend my apologies for what happened yesterday. Derek leaned back in his chair. That's so? Douglas cleared his throat. Yes, sir. What happened was a terrible misunderstanding, and the officers involved... Stop! Derek's voice was firm. Don't insult my intelligence. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was racial profiling. Douglas hesitated. I understand why you feel that way, and we are conducting an internal investigation. Vanessa scoffed, loudly. Derek smirked. Yeah, I bet you are. Probably right now while the story's still blowing up online. Douglas exhaled sharply. Look, Carter, we don't want this to turn into... A lawsuit? Derek finished. A long pause. Derek's grip tightened on the phone. Your officers humiliated me in front of my family. They put cuffs on me. They terrorized my daughters. Maya had cried herself to sleep. Zoe had asked him, Are the police going to take you away again? Derek had spent his entire life teaching them that he was strong, that he would protect them. And now, because of 2 power-drunk cops, his daughters were afraid their own father could be taken away. Douglas sighed. What do you want? Derek glanced at Vanessa. Her eyes gleamed with something dangerous. She nodded. Derek smiled. For starters, fire them. Douglas sucked in a sharp breath. I can't just... You can, and you will. Derek's voice was ice cold. Or you'll be seeing me in court. Douglas hesitated. And if we do? Derek's smile widened. Then I'll still see you in court. Vanessa laughed softly. We're suing the entire department, she called out. Douglas groaned. Agent Carter, please. No, Derek said, standing up. No more favors, no more passes, no more second chances. You let men like that wear a badge. You let them think they can do whatever they want. And now you're going to pay for it. Douglas sighed, defeated. I'll have to call you back. You do that, Derek said, hanging up. Vanessa smirked. Think he got the message? Derek exhaled, rolling his shoulders. Oh, he got it. And if he doesn't? He cracked his knuckles. We'll make sure he does. The news cycle exploded. Major networks picked up the story. FBI agent racially profiled and arrested on vacation. Officer suspended after unlawful arrest of federal agent. Viral video sparks outrage over racial profiling. The resort's name was all over social media. People were boycotting. Former guests were leaving reviews about their own experiences with discrimination there. And the police department? They were scrambling. They tried to release a statement, one of those weak PR-crafted apologies, but it was too late. The video had been shared millions of times. Vanessa and Derek sat in their hotel suite, watching a news anchor discuss the incident. Derek shook his head. "You know what's crazy?" Vanessa arched an eyebrow. "I've arrested drug lords, murderers, terrorists. I've done more for this country than those officers ever will." He exhaled. "And still, I wasn't a man to them. Just a black guy in a nice resort." Vanessa reached over, squeezing his hand. "That's why we're not letting this go." Derek nodded. "Damn right." The resort manager showed up later that evening, his face dripping with sweat. "Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter, he swallowed. "I just want to personally apologize for everything that happened." Vanessa leaned back, arms crossed. "You let your staff call the cops on paying guests. You watched as they arrested my husband in front of our children." She tilted her head. "And now you're sorry?" The manager's hands shook as he adjusted his tie. We want to make this right." Derek raised an eyebrow. "And how do you plan to do that?" The manager took a deep breath. "We're offering to comp your entire stay, refund your expenses, and—" Vanessa held up a hand. "Stop. You think money is going to fix this?" The manager swallowed. "Well, Derek stood up, towering over him. "You called the cops on my family," Derek said, voice low. "You let them treat me like a criminal. My daughters saw me in handcuffs." The manager shrank back. "You think a free vacation makes that go away?" Derek scoffed. "You're getting sued, too." The manager's face went ghost white. Vanessa smiled sweetly. "Oh, and don't bother offering a settlement. We're taking this all the way." The next morning, Derek sat Zoe and Maya down at the breakfast table. Zoe played with her cereal, quiet, her usual energy gone. Maya clung to Vanessa's arm. Derek rested his hands on the table. "Girls," he said gently, "I know yesterday was scary." Zoe looked up. "Are they coming back?" Derek's heart clenched. "No," he said softly. "No one is ever going to take me away from you." Zoe hesitated. "But they tried." Derek exhaled. "Yeah, they did." Maya sniffled. "Why?" Derek exchanged a look with Vanessa, then turned back to them. "Because some people, they don't see us the way they should. They judge before they understand." Zoe frowned. "So what do we do?" Derek smiled. "We fight." Vanessa reached over, squeezing Zoe's hand. "When people do something wrong, we don't let them get away with it. We make sure they answer for it." Zoe's little fists clenched. "Like superheroes?" Derek chuckled. "Something like that." Maya rubbed her eyes. "So we're gonna win." Vanessa smiled. "Sweetheart, we already have."